problem. Can you catch an egg from a 17-foot drop using nothing but 100 straws and a roll of masking tape so that the egg doesn't crack when it hits the ground? If you have egg, ladder, straws, and tape, and you've been talking about gravity, acceleration, if you've been doing some kind of like materials science, this is a great beginning physics kind of problem. Or just general science. This is a very fun activity, to be handed 100 straws and a roll of masking tape and say, all right,
exactly,
you've got however much time we have this afternoon, build me a contraption that's going to keep the egg from breaking.
Yeah.
So these two pictures here are from a student who had this exact problem, and they started off with a different design. It was triangular instead of square at the base, and they made some adjustments to make it a little bit more stable and used extra masking tape to create kind of a cushiony pad at the bottom, like a hammock to catch the egg. And so, there's an element of math to it, but there's also an element of just kind of creativity and artistry. And they tested with 3 eggs, and 2 of the eggs did not crack. The third one missed the basket.
Oh, well, that had nothing to do with the design then.
No, except that it was a small target. So maybe in a future iteration of the design, we incorporate a wider funnel so that if your aim is off, you're less likely to splat. My mom used to do this kind of thing when I was a kid. We had something called Camp Friday, which was like a most of the day science camp for kids. It was just like a one-off co-op kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And instead of building a catcher, what we would do is she gave us straws, tape, and string and plastic bags, all horrible things for the environment. But our job was to build a contraption so that it would be attached to the egg and would land and keep the egg from cracking. So some people would put together, because we've been talking about drag and air resistance, they would put together a parachute and tie it to their little egg lander. Other people, we had talked about how suspensions work. So they would build a little cage with lots of like little sticks poking out to try and absorb the force of the impact. And it hardly mattered if you succeeded or failed, as long as somebody succeeded, because it was just as much fun to see the egg crack. And you learned what worked and what didn't work, and that's just as valuable.
And it's very valuable. Well, what did they say? Einstein failed a lot before he made the first light bulb, but he learned something every step of the way.
He learned 1,000 things that wouldn't work.
Yes, exactly.
So here's some criteria for a good problem for your kids to solve. If you're going to give them a problem, you want to make sure these elements are included. So a statement of the problem.
Yep.
So the egg needs to get to the floor from this height. It will crack if you don't intervene. Next is the criteria for success. So you will be successful if the egg does not crack. When we pick it up, it has no fault lines. The parameters and limitations, you want to try and keep as few parameters as possible, because the more parameters you have, the more you're limiting their creativity.
I was just thinking of that. Yes.
Yeah. So in this case, your limitations and parameters are your materials. So you have 100 straws and 1 roll of masking tape.
Right.
Or
and also your height that you're dropping it from.
Yes. Yep. It'll be 17 feet, or out of a 2nd-story window, or whatever you want it to be. Submission guidelines. This is, in an experiment situation like this, submission guidelines says, well, we're going to do the thing and see how it goes. But your problem might be something completely different, and their submission needs to be a Word document or an Excel sheet or a map that they have drawn or something like that. So, if they need to email it into you or have it printed or typed or whatever it may be, you need to let them know how you expect to receive this information.
Yeah, definitely.
Then it's good to list the required skills and subject knowledge that they're going to need. So, hey, in order to do this, you're going to need to know how to use Excel, or you're going to need to know a little bit about beekeeping, or whatever the problem requires.
Yes, exactly.
And that gives them some background information about what they need to know. And if they don't know one of these things, they have time at the beginning to go figure out, okay, I need to watch this tutorial and get this knowledge before I dig into it. Otherwise, I'm going to be halfway through my project and then get super frustrated because I didn't realize, oh no, I have to know how to attach a file.
Well, and you as a teacher should give that information to your students too.
Absolutely.
Because a lot of times we'll just kind of give them a project and not think of all the little things that go into that. It's like when my daughter started using PowerPoint, I walked her through the process and some tutorials on how to, add different things to PowerPoint presentations. So she wasn't just, just make a PowerPoint now of what you understood. Well, that kind of leaves her at a deficit.
Yeah, I mean, PowerPoint isn't intuitive. If you've never used that kind of thing before, it's very intimidating.
Definitely.
The number 6 is resources available. So this is here's some websites that you should consider browsing. Here's a calculator that might come in handy. Here are some people that you could interview. Here's a bunch of books that we checked out from the library. So give them a little nudge in the right direction about where to find this information. You're not solving the problem for them by doing that. You're just letting them know, here's what's available to you.
Right.
And then lastly, like we talked about before, the evaluation rubric. So you're going to be graded on, handwriting and spelling counts, or maybe it doesn't.
Exactly.
I'll never forget my freshman biomechanics class. I was a theater major, and biomechanics was about how to use your body as a performer and not injure yourself on stage when you're doing, stage combat and gymnastics and stuff.
That's a good thing to know how to do.
Very useful, but it was all medical terminology and muscle groups and, nerves and different parts that had very hard to spell words. And I'll never forget that I got every single problem on my final exam right, but I got a C because I misspelled 22 medical terms. But, the professor said spelling counts, and I did not study the spelling. So I could have had a better grade on that, but I studied the wrong material. Well, so when your kids know what counts and what doesn't count, it frees them to do their best work.
It does. And then for my